Hello everyone, this is The Old is New. My name is Thomas Collinson, friends, family, countrymen. So, today is a new day. Today is June 15th, 2024. And life is good, I hope, for you and yours. Let's jump right into this. So normally, if you remember, if you're paying attention, I've been starting to show off with a foreign language, and I'm going to move past that. I will give you the answer to last week's. Maybe I can find a way to keep the show interesting when I first start, but I'm going to take a break. I might introduce the Portuguese language on a more regular basis, Brazilian Portuguese. So, this is, last week's was Built on the Rock, and that was Greek. Chitson panos do vraco. So that was Greek, if any of you tried to find the answer last week, or however long ago that was. Anyway, I got an idea here. I want to talk about the passion of Jesus Christ. Right now, my plan is to go through Mark, the Gospel of Mark, and I'm going to start right after Jesus is suffering in Gethsemane, and I'm going to read today Mark chapter 14, verse 43, and I'm going to read all the way through to 72. And basically, over the next few episodes, next few shows, I'm going to read through the passion narrative in the Gospel of Mark and just try to dig through it and try and bring some light to the text and hopefully offer some insight that is helpful to you and to myself too. As a matter of fact, I like listening back now and then and hearing what was said, just to see if I have anything to gain from it also. I was listening to the show on suffering today a little bit. So there's 14. This is the 15th show, so it's going good. I had a break, and anyway, I won't go on and on. I'll just jump right in to this. I want to be consistent, and so that's my effort, to be consistent and keep this interesting. And this is the gospel. This is the good news. This is the most important news on planet Earth. This is the most important news in the history of mankind. But not everybody agrees with me, and not everybody agrees with you. So be on guard and don't give up, and don't let the world push you around. Don't let the world persuade you into thinking it's not good to be in pursuit of the truth. And that's ultimately what Jesus is, the truth. So people can mock the Christian faith as much as they want. It doesn't make it wrong or erroneous. The faith is true, and that's why we stand and believe. All throughout the world, there's billions of Christians, billions and billions of Christians, and we're not alone. And the world is what it is today because of Christianity. Modern politics, modern governments, the dignity of every human person is recognized by NATO, the European nations. All throughout the world, there's human rights because of the Christian faith, because of what the Christian church teaches. We've eliminated slavery for the most part. We've established hospitals and universities and so on and so forth. It's the world is a better place because of Christ, and I do believe that. And I don't think it's as nearly as bad as it once was here on Earth, say 500 years ago. And I think it's getting better, contrary to what the media says or the internet. My life's fine. I mean, I'm not concerned about the political climate. I'm not concerned about rumors of wars. I'm not concerned about illnesses, because I have faith, because I have God. I have this peace in my heart that's unshakable. You can't take it from me. No matter what you do, you can throw me in jail, you can kill me, you can't take my peace from me. You can't kill my soul. God is alive in me, and God is alive in you. And that's the gift of the Holy Spirit. That's the gift of the faith. That's the gift of knowing the Father through the Son and walking the walk, obeying the moral law, and being courageous in that. So if this old is new, this show is reaching you and helping you on your faith journey, that's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. Hopefully someone will write me eventually. That's neither here nor there. So let me start. This is Mark chapter 14, verse 43. And then I'm going to continue on for a bit. I'll probably break it down into 3 sections here, but bear with me. This is a shorter paragraph or 2. So the betrayal and arrest of Jesus, and immediately, so this is right after he was suffering in the garden. This is after the Last Supper. After Jesus prophesies and tells Peter he will deny him, after Jesus suffers in the garden, and this starts right as the guards and Judas are approaching to take Jesus away. So just for the context, Mark chapter 14, verse 43. Here we go. The betrayal and arrest of Jesus. And immediately while he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a crowd with swords and clubs, from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I shall kiss is the man. Seize him and lead him away safely." And when he came, he went up to him at once and said, "Master," and kissed him. And they laid hands on him and seized him. But one of those who stood by drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to them, "Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled." And they all deserted him and fled. And a young man followed him with nothing but a linen cloth about his body. And they seized him, but he left the linen cloth and ran away naked. So quickly, this is the scene where the Roman guards sent by the religious Jewish leaders, the scribes and the Pharisees, all these people who worked so hard for an official title of teacher of the law of Moses, and they all had extensive theological degrees, so to speak, and theological training, and were trained in the Old Testament, and were basically the heads of the religious movement of the Jews, the religious faith of the Jews. And they were all against, well, not all of them, but the majority of them were against him because Jesus didn't fit into their interpretation of the Old Testament. That's, as I was brainstorming about what I wanted to talk about here, this next section goes on more about that. But so the scribes and the Pharisees, the Jewish religious leaders of the day that were against Jesus, sent the Roman soldiers and Judas, after he agreed to betray him for some silver. They captured Jesus, and this is this paragraph. This is this part of scripture, and they were all, I'll get into the reasoning why, but I want to say something about what Jesus says here when he says, "Have you come out against the robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me, but let the scriptures be fulfilled." So listen to that. Like, he's saying they were against him the whole time, but they were not permitted. They did not make a move. They did not try to kill him. Although at times they did try to catch him and apprehend him, but it's noted that he slipped away from them at times. Excuse me. And but they didn't get a hold of him, and they weren't permitted to. But now God the Father has allowed them to seize him, but for a greater good, and to bring a great good out of Jesus' passion, and this is just the beginning of this narrative here. But listen to what he says after that. But let the scriptures be fulfilled. So Jesus obviously is saying this is what is happening to him. What is happening to Jesus is written about in the Jewish text, in the Jewish scriptures, in prophecy. You could read I had to pause it and look it up, but it's Psalm 22 you should become familiar with, in Isiah 53. Those are directly correlated to the passion. For instance, Psalm 22, it says, I can count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. And the soldiers, while Jesus was on the cross, cast lots for his cloak. Says someone here, yes, dogs are around about me. A company of evildoers encircle me. They have pierced my hands and feet. And that's obviously Jesus' hands and feet were pierced. This whole psalm is Jesus quotes from the cross. The first line of it is, my God, why have you forsaken me? I'll talk more about that when I get to the crucifixion. Also, you should become familiar with Isaiah 53. It's titled The Lord's Suffering Servant. It goes on and on about how a servant of God would suffer on behalf of others, and he was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth, like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. And as we read through this gospel narrative of the Passion, you'll see how calmly Jesus went through it all and didn't offer any resistance, which is noble but profound. He willingly went into it and willingly came out of the tomb and rose triumphantly. So let me jump back in. I just want to make the point that Jesus was claiming that the scriptures be fulfilled in him. So that's another note to consider, is that Jesus knew who he was and he knew his purpose. He was very aware that he was the Messiah, God's only son, and he knew what was coming, and he knew him going to the cross was part of this master plan to redeem the world, and that's why he went through it, for a great good. But let's jump into this next paragraph here. Mark chapter 14, verse 53, Jesus before the council. And they led Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes were assembled. And Peter had followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest, and he was sitting with the guards and warming himself at the fire. Now the chief priest and the whole council sought testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none, for many bore false witness against him, and their witness did not agree. And some stood up and bore false witness against him, saying, We heard him say, I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands. Yet, not even so did their testimony agree. And the high priest stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you? But he was silent and made no answer. Again, the high priest asked him, Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. And the high priest tore his clothes and said, Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard this blasphemy. What is your decision? And they all condemned him as deserving death. And some began to spit on him and to cover his face and to strike him, saying to him, Prophesy. And the guards received him with blows. So really, you should really get familiar with Isaiah 53, and that this really make a lot more sense. He even says he was silent and made no answer. like what I just read out of the sheep led to the slaughter, and no resistance. You just passively. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a time to defend yourself and your loved ones, and there's justifiable reasons for self-defense. But this is a unique scenario where Jesus laid down his arms to achieve something great. So this is not your run-of-the-mill situation where, someone's coming at you and you need to defend yourself. This is the Son of God entering willingly into something he knew he was going into. Love conquers hate, and that's the whole point. Love conquers evil, good conquers evil. That's the whole point of the crucifixion, the whole point of the passion. Something so horrible to happen to somebody, and something so great to come out of it. The forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, the promise of heaven opening up for all mankind. I think it was a worthwhile endeavor on Jesus' behalf. So, but listen to what these scribes and Pharisees, these self-righteous scribes and Pharisees, Jesus didn't fit into their mold of Jewish interpretation of the scriptures at the time. And at the time, it was the Old Testament. And a lot of these religious leaders only accepted the first 5 books, and some of them accepted the whole Old Testament, and some they argued over everything. Some of them believed in the resurrection, some of them didn't believe in the resurrection. The scribes and the Sadducees and the Pharisees, all these people who were quote unquote learned in the ways of God, and they were false. They were false. These were Jesus' enemies while he was preaching in his ministry on earth. These were the people who opposed him. These were the false prophets. These were the false religious teachers. These were wolves in sheep's clothing. These were the people pretending to be godly, but on the inside they were ugly. And that's the truth. I mean, some of them, like Nicodemus, was humble enough to accept Jesus, and he was one of the ruling classes of these elite religious leaders, and some of them I'm sure did accept Jesus, but as you can see, many of them opposed Jesus, and they had their own opinion about theology, and Jesus claiming to be a God offended them. And so listen to what they say. I mean, Jesus, when the one scribe, the high priest, was it the high priest? Again, the high priest asked him, Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. And the high priest tore his clothes because of that response. He ripped his cloak in anger and frustration because Jesus was telling the truth and he didn't like the truth. And that's the thing. People are offended at Jesus because it's the truth. And if if people don't want to be, don't want to know the truth, and they oppose God, or they're too proud to admit that they're not God. They're too proud to admit that they don't know everything. So pride is the problem here. This high priest thought he knew the law of Moses down to the T, and he knew it all. So there was no teaching him. Jesus couldn't teach him because he already knew it all, and he was so sure that Jesus was lying, and so they accused him of blasphemy. They wanted to kill him because he was claiming to be God, and they believed he was lying about it. That's why they killed him, because Jesus was clearly professing to be the Son of God, making him divine, the only Son of God, the Messiah, the promised Messiah, the Son of Man, prophesied in the book of Daniel and Isaiah and the suffering servant, and he was claiming to be just what the text prophesied, and they were too blind to see the truth of who Jesus is. So they were just like, no, you're wrong, you're lying, and we're going to kill you for it. And that's what they did. Take any anti-Semitism out of the equation. These were just a few radical, religious, over self-righteous, religious, quote-unquote leaders that were mistaken about Jesus' identity, and they gathered together, they grouped up against them by God's almighty permission and divine will. He allowed it, so that's what happened. So they needed to pin an offense, a justifiable offense against him, to kill him according to the law, and blasphemy was the one they pinned on him, because he said he is God, and he rightfully so would have deserved to die according to the law of Moses if he was lying, if he was a false prophet. But if he was a true prophet, if he was telling the truth, his death is innocent. The blood, they even say it, let the blood be on their hands. We'll get to that later. Jesus was innocent, and he was telling the truth, I believe. And he was wrongfully killed for telling the truth of who he is, for just being himself. They killed him for him being himself. Sad. But it leads to great joy. Just like how, tears may come at night, but laughter will return in the morning. And that's it. That's it. That's the truth. Yeah. I'll get through this next chapter. This is Peter when he denies him, just for the sake of getting through the whole narrative in Mark. And as Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the maids of the high priest came, and seeing Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said, You also were with the Nazarene Jesus. But he denied it, saying, I neither know nor understand what you mean. And he went out into the gateway. And the maid saw him and began again to say to the bystanders, This man is one of them. But again he denied it. And after a little while again the bystanders said to Peter, Certainly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean. But he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, I do not know this man of whom you speak. And immediately the cock crowed a second time. And Peter remembered how Jesus had said to him, Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. And he broke down and wept. Man, that's heavy, because Peter is like his best friend, like his closest companion, leading all of the other apostles and promising Jesus prior to this. Peter's like saying to Jesus, wherever you go, I'm going. Even if you're going to your death, I'm going with you. I'm willing to die for this. I'm willing to die for you also. And I think he had the best intentions, but he got scared. Fear can run rampant, and but that's not the end of Peter's story. Obviously, Peter has stayed alive, and when Jesus rose from the grave and made himself known, he made it right. He made things right, and you can always come back to the Lord, and that's a great example of Peter's repentance, of just being apologetic and saying, Lord, I'm sorry, I did not stand up for you when you needed me most. Jesus went into his passion basically with himself, and some of the women were closely walking with him. I think the apostle John was closely. He ended up at the cross, at the foot of the cross with Mary, Jesus' mother also. So there was some people who stayed by his side, but Peter was not one of them. And the apostles in general, the majority of them scattered. So to just start the passion narrative, let me just summarize. We went through the betrayal and the arrest of Jesus um, in the Garden of Gethsemane, and then Jesus was brought to the high council, the council of the priests and the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and that's when they accused him of blasphemy for telling the truth. And basically, their plan is coming together more and more. And then we go into where we see how Peter was at the courtyard with the council and close by while all that pinning the guilty penance on Jesus was going down. And so now, next time, sorry, my phone's chiming. We're gonna next time I'll get into Jesus before Pilate and so on and so forth. I'm gonna break it down to at least 1, 2, 3. You might be 3 or 4 more. Just to break this passion account piece by piece. So, but read the passion account for yourself. I mean, become familiar with what Jesus went through for us. Become familiar with that. This is true. If this is true, and if someone put a gun to my head and I said, is the gospel narrative true? Was Jesus telling the truth? Did Jesus rise from the grave? I'd have to say yes. And hopefully there'd be no bullets in the gun. No, you know what I'm saying. Whether there's a bullet or not, doesn't matter. I'm telling the truth. But thankfully, we live in a world where Christianity is widely accepted, and we live in a Christian world. It's not a post-Christian world. There's billions of Christians in the world. We're just quiet. We're quiet. We're humble. We keep to ourselves. We don't try to shove the truth down people's throats. Like, take it or leave it. Like, either you're a fan or you're not. Either you're a friend of Christ or you're a friend of the world. It don't bother me who you're friends with. It don't. It really doesn't. If you want to be worldly, go for it. You'll come around eventually, and if you don't, that's on you. That's not on me. I can only do what I can to help you. I can only do what I can to help myself. So, to break it down, there's where we're at. I'll see you next time. Ciao. Ficar com Deus.